Okay, good morning. So what we have in front of us is the Alter Rebbe's Code of Jewish Law. We're going to be looking at the sections that cover the laws we learned in the Gemara, which is essentially the law of the order of Kiddush on the night of Yom Tov when it is combined with Havdalah. That's what we've been learning in the Gemara, the various different views as to how one should combine the Kiddush and Havdalah. Right, because there's 5 brachas total. They have to be recited. There's a blessing over the wine, the blessing of Kiddush for the new day, the blessing of Havdalah, closing out the old day, Shabbos, right, considering that Yom Tov is Saturday night is Motzei Shabbos. And then along with Havdalah comes the blessing over the candle. Psalmim is not on the table right now because, again, Psalmim is because the reason we say we make the bracha over Psalmim on a regular Saturday night is because the neshama is a little saddened at the Shabbos going away. But if you hear this, the drop from Shabbos to weekday is not complete, considering they're going from Shabbos into another holiday. So that's Psalmim is not on the table, but the candle bracha is there. So on Shabbos you cannot light a candle. On Yom Tov you may. So there's a bracha on the candle there as you go from Shabbos to Yom Tov. And then finally there's the bracha of Shechianu. Every time we come to a Yom Tov, we haven't experienced it in the whole year, there's a Shechianu. So there's 5 blessings, and there's all kinds of combinations you can make with 5. And that's what we went through yesterday, all the various different principles that support, all those principles that collide in this soup of brachas. And then depending on which principles you highlight or stress, that would make the order of your brachas. So we discussed that at length yesterday, all the various different combinations. And we concluded in the Gemara that the halacha is yak nahaz, yayin, kiddush, ner, havdalah, zman. So that's wine, that's yayin, kiddush, candle, havdalah, and time, that is shechianu. Thanking Hashem for having arrived at this occasion. So in the Alter Rebbe Shulchan Aruch, this law comes in Taf Ayin Gimel, chapter 473. Now look at the first page, you can see the title. Chapter 473, the laws governing the first cup of wine and the order of the Pesach Seder until the second cup of wine. Now you understand why the packet's so big. There's a lot to cover. There's the laws of Kiddush itself. That's the first cup of wine. And then all the laws that go till the second cup of wine, that is to say the whole order of the Haggadah. So considering that we are learning the last chapter of Psachim, which goes through the Seder night, we're going to be revisiting this chapter quite a bit. So in the past, what we did was we learned all the relevant Gemara for a full chapter of Shulchan Aruch, and then learned the whole chapter. We did that with Kiddush and Shul. We did that with making Kiddush in the place where you eat. We did that with moving location while eating. But here, it's going to be way too much. It's half the chapter. By the time it will be too disjointed if we waited till we learned all the relevant Gemara for this entire chapter. So we will learn the various sections within this chapter that pertain to the various laws we're learning as we go along. And therefore, over the course of the next, however long this class continues, however long we continue learning this chapter, we'll end up coming back to this Taf Ayin Gimel, to this chapter in Shulchan Aruch, and over time we'll end up finishing it all.
Will this be the final packet?
No, there's another sip, because this only goes till the second cup. We still have.
We're completing the whole Seder night.
We're completing the whole Seder night, so we'll have to continue. There's more chapters to come. Right? Because if you look at the top right, where it says like chapter 474, we have to cover that, a blessing that we're saying in the second cup. Also the one before, 472.
Oh, yeah.
Laws pertaining to reclining and drinking the 4 cups of wine at the Seder. We're going to be covering that too. All the laws pertaining to the night of Seder we're going to be covering. So it's much more than just this chapter, but we're going to go piece by piece instead of waiting for the whole entire chapter to be finished.
Anyway, because then one doesn't get left out for too long.
Correct.
Tomorrow.
Correct. Okay, so now with that in mind, let's go to halacha number 6, halacha vav. It's 2 halachas, 2 subsections, 6 and 7, that cover the laws of the Kiddush as it's combined with Havdalah. And also, I have one more thing. We're going to learn also the relevant sections from the Rebbe's Haggadah. I don't have it on the screen, but I got a copy here. So just to understand quickly what the Rebbe's Haggadah is, so we understand what we're doing as we go forward. So we're looking at the Alter Rebbe Shulchan Aruch, right? The Code of Jewish Law written by the Alter Rebbe. The Code of Jewish Law written by the Alter Rebbe, as I mentioned a number of times, is predominantly a conglomerate and a collection of views that were written since the end of the Shulchan Aruch by Rabbi Yosef Cairo in the 15th, 16th century. Right, the Alter Rebbe being the 18th and 19th century. Right, he dies in 1812, so it's the beginning of the 19th century. So in those couple hundred years, lots have been written on the Shulchan Aruch, all kinds of commentary. So the Alter Rebbe collects that, presents all the various different views, and then gives a conclusion. Mm-hmm. Whatever, the uniqueness of the Alter Rebbe Shulchan Aruch we're not going to go through right now, but essentially it comes down to the way in which the Alter Rebbe formulates these views that itself is a learning. In other words, because the way in which he presents the views, it tells you what he thinks about them, his conclusions, and then sometimes, as we've learned in the last chapter, sometimes he has his own view that he adds to the table. Now, in addition to this Shulchan Aruch, the Alter Rebbe also wrote a Seder. Writing a Seder means that, first of all, you fix the text, the liturgy, the text of the Seder to the best of your ability. The Alter Rebbe had some 60 Siddurim open in front of him to try to find the best variant of the text, making it work on 3 levels: dikduk, that is to say proper grammar; halacha, making sure that the text covers the halacha; and then number 3, kabbalistically, that the text follows the kabbalistic tradition. So it's a bold project, right? Because oftentimes you have siddurim that focus on linguistics, some that focus more on the halacha, some that are focused on the Kabbalah, but here having one that combines all 3 is quite unique. And as most siddurim do, they have instructions. And the instructions are also halachic in nature, right? If you open up your English Siddur, your Art Scroll, your Kohas Siddur, there's instructions: stand here, sit here, pick up your tzitzis here, hold your tzitzis that way, right? And then sometime in the back of the Siddur, you have outline of Shabbos laws, outline of laws of brachas. By benching, you have laws of benching, right? And additionally, a Siddur doesn't just mean the Siddur that we have, which only covers weekday prayers. It covers all year round liturgy. So the Siddur includes what to say on Rosh Hashanah, and then the laws around that. So there's like little notes on the laws of blowing shofar, for example. And then you have also the Seder night. What do you say on the Seder night? What we call the Haggadah is, in the broader term, incorporated within a Siddur, right? It's part of the liturgy of the Jewish cycle. So in there'll also be instructions in the Haggadah that the Alter Rebbe writes. There's instructions: stand here, sit here, pick up your cup here, hold your cup that way, drink it now, don't drink this, make a blessing, don't make a blessing, right? Mm-hmm. So those instructions that come in the Siddur, written first of all later than the Alter Rebbe's Shulchan Aruch, later in his life, and number 2, whereas the Shulchan Aruch is a collection of views that have been written before him, the Siddur is primarily his own thinking, and again, combining halacha and Kabbalah, as well as taking sometimes the more strict view rather than the more lenient view that might have been dominant before him, and therefore in the Shulchan Aruch sometimes it comes out lenient, and the Siddur, the same law, will be more strict. So Chabad Chassidim, when there's a divergence between the Siddur and the Shulchan Aruch, will follow the Siddur. Okay. Now, the Rebbe wrote a commentary on the Alter Rebbe's Haggadah, i.e. the Siddur, or the section of the Siddur that covers Haggadah, the Seder night. So what we're going to be looking at is the relevant passages in the Alter Rebbe's Haggadah, as well as the Rebbe's commentary to that. So this is the context. Yeah, I did a series this year. Right, we learned before Pesach, we used the Alter Rebbe's Siddur and then the Rebbe's commentary to give an overview of the Seder night, and a lot of it was built on what we're learning here in this chapter. Right, we quoted various sections there that describe the overarching Seder, so you can get a feeling of that. And if you want to go more in depth, have a look at those videos. Okay, so with that in mind, let's begin with the Alter Rebbe's Siddur. Shulchan Aruch, I apologize. So we're chapter 473, Tov Ayin Gimel, Halacha Vav, subsection 6. Im chol b'Motzei Shabbos, if the Seder falls on Saturday night. Tzarich lemer Havdalah, one has to make Havdalah. La'achar HaKiddush, following the Kiddush. Havdalah has to be done following the Kiddush. Right? This is Rav's view, that the Havdalah comes after Kiddush because you don't want to make as if Shabbos is a burden you're trying to get rid of. So you postpone the Havdalah to the end of your recitation. Mm-hmm. Now, the Im Yesh Lo Ner, if he has a candle, Yivarech Allah, you should make a blessing on it. Interesting phrasing. If he has a candle. See the phrasing?
Yeah, for sure.
So look at footnote 25. Yeah, keep your finger on the back there. So on the screen it pops up for us, but papers don't have that kind of technology. You have 25?
Yeah.
Okay, see section 298, where the Alter Rebbe explains the laws pertaining to the blessing recited over the light of the Saturday on Saturday night. When a festival falls on Saturday night, this blessing is not recited over a special Havdalah candle, nor is it customary to hold one's fingernails up to reflect the light, the candle's light. Mm-hmm. Instead, after reciting the blessing, one should gaze at the candles that were kindled in honor of the festival. See the Rebbe's Haggadah. So let's look at the Rebbe's Haggadah. This is where it comes from. On the left-hand side, where it says Havdalah. Mm-hmm. Yeah, so the bold italics there, which is Havdalah, that is the quote from the Alter Rebbe Seder / Haggadah. Right, that in the Alter Rebbe's Haggadah it says one should make Havdalah at this juncture. Right, and I was commenting on that. And it writes, Minig Beis Harav, the custom in the Chabad Rebbe's house, the Motzei Shabbos, Kiddush, Havdalah Motzei Shabbos, on the Havdalah that one does on Saturday night, which is also a Yom Tov. Ein mekarven anedis, one doesn't bring the candles near them. Ve'ein ma'achdin hashalev shalem, and you do not unite the flames, right? Because on Saturday night, one is supposed to have a torch to look at and not just a candle. So if you have two candles, you got to put the two candles together. That way it turns into a torch. Says the Rebbe, when that Saturday night is Yom Tov, it's not our custom to do that. So the candles stay as they are on the Shabbos table. And likewise, you don't look at our nails, as is the custom on a Friday, on a regular Motzei Shabbos, where we make use of the candles, as we thank Hashem for the candles, by looking at the reflection of the candles in our nails. We're not going to get into that now. That's for another time. It's too many tangents. It's only that while one makes the blessing over the candles, blessed are you, creator of candles, creator of light that comes from fire, to be more accurate. One looks at the candles as they each stand independent on the table. That's it. Okay, which is an interesting thing here. Everybody says it's the minig of the house of the Rebbe, which is one of the things that the Rebbe did work very hard for, is to codify Chabad custom. Chabad custom had never been codified. It was all tradition, word of mouth, and sometimes in different cities, Chabad practiced a different way. So a chassid living in the middle of town, in the middle of Russia, doesn't necessarily know that it was custom on a Friday night or on a Saturday night he's making Havdalah.
Rebbe meaning the Alter Rebbe at that time?
Any Rebbe. Oh. Any of the Chabad Rebbes. If you're living in the middle of town, wherever, right, how would you know what the rumor heard? You heard someone, there's one guy who heard that was there, who saw the Rebbe do this, he's not sure. But the Rebbe, having close access to his father-in-law, made it his mission to collect, first of all, to observe his father-in-law and document what the official custom of his father-in-law was, the Rebbe of Chabad at the time. And then the Rebbe also, there's quite a few letters we have in the Rebbe's volumes of letters, where he's writing to elder Hasidim, asking, what did you observe by the 5th Chabad Rebbe? What did you observe by the 4th Chabad Rebbe? What did your parents do? What was the custom in your town? And Rebbe would collect all these things, and it became a book called Sefer Manhagim, Book of Chabad Customs, the official book of Chabad Customs, lots of which is in Hayom Yom. Oftentimes the Hayom Yom is a custom, as well as here in the Haggadah, customs.
So the Rebbe would confer with his father-in-law?
His father-in-law about the official Chabad custom, sourcing the customs, correct.
How would he know, father-in-law?
He was the Rebbe. So he would have heard from his father, heard from his father, heard from his father, right? He was, he's on the line of succession.
The Rebbe codified it.
Right, but our Rebbe codified it for the public. The first one to make it public.
How did he do that? Was it in a book?
In a book called Sefer Manhagim Chabad. Actually, originally it was in Hayom Yom. Scattered throughout the Hayom Yom, sometimes the statement is a little custom. In the Haggadah here. And then a book that was actually written by Rabbi Levi and the Mashpia here in Montreal, by Green Glass, the famous Kabbalist here in Montreal, they worked together and thereby oversaw the publication of a book called Sefer Manhagim Chabad, the book of Chabad customs.
So this was
the official book of Chabad customs.
years after the Hayom Yom was already.
A couple years later, within the 5-6 years. Yeah.
Like in the late 50s.
Yeah. No, before the 50s, late 40s.
Late 40s.
Before they ever became Rebbe. Sorry, before they ever became Rebbe. Hayom Yom is in 43 or 44, right? So I think it's 46, 47, somewhere there, which is around the same time that Havdalah is published. Also, before that, one of the jobs they ever first had when he came to America for his father-in-law was to oversee the Chabad publishing house. So they worked a lot on systemizing Chabad Hasidic learning, which before then was in people's private collections of manuscripts. There were a few books that were printed. The Alter Rebbe's Tanya, the Likutei Torah, the Torah, the Metzei Shabbos, certain books that were printed, but most of it was in manuscript form. Copyists would handwrite, and you would pay a copyist.
Have like folios. Like
people would have folios of their collected copies. That's right. You can find all this online. Scans of these folios are available online on Chabad's central library website. Where it has all these amazing manuscripts photostated and uploaded. Really, really open source learning. Right. So Deborah spent a lot of work in publicizing and systemizing Hasidic learning, bringing it into the modern era, if you will. And so part of that was collecting custom. So the Haggadah, the Hayom Yom, where there's custom, and then in the Alter Rebbe has a Hasidic commentary to the Seder, which is really his son wrote it. Whatever, we'll get into that. But in the back, when they republished that, in the back they would put collection of customs, because again, the Seder includes halachic instruction. So supplement to that is Chabad custom that hasn't been written into the Seder, but has been practiced. Mm-hmm. So, but all those together came to make the Sefer Manhagim the official book of Chabad custom. I believe it's available in English, probably online. I'm sure Chabad.org has it. Anyway, okay, let's go forward. So, if he has a candle, your Baruch Allah should make a blessing on the candle. Koydem Havdalah, before the Havdalah, La'achar Kiddush, after the Kiddush. Right? So what did I say? You say, but Deborah doesn't phrase it as, here's the order of what you do. He's like phrasing it in the form of the principles. First he says Havdalah follows Kiddush. That's principle A. Principle B is, if you have candle, Havdalah follows candle. Now, the Havdalah, after you've done Havdalah, you make Shechionu. Nimtza. So the result is that the Seder, brachas, this is the order of the brachas. Yakna has Yain Kiddush Ner Havdalah Zman. Yeah. Right. The citations here take us to. This is the famous thing. Yakna has. The citations there take us to the. Takes us to Psachim. Takes us to our tractate. Okay. Now here are things that the Gemara doesn't address directly. Says the Alter Rebbe, parentheses, which again mentioned before. Parentheses means it's the Alter Rebbe's own thinking, and sometimes it means it's unresolved, but sometimes it means it's his own chiddush, his own novel approach. Let's see. The Mishina HaSeder, if the person reversed the order, he brought back. He did earlier that which is supposed to be done later. And he did later that which was supposed to be done earlier. Yatzei fulfill his obligation. Because at the end of the day, he did everything. And there's certainly at least one opinion in the Gemara that he can rely on, because every variation is in the Gemara as an opinion, as we learned yesterday. And therefore, he shouldn't go back and make the blessing again. Chutz, with one exception. If the person did Kiddush before wine, that's the only problem. That would be the only problem. Even though, by the way, there were opinions in the Gemara that put Kiddush before wine. Mm-hmm. Right? There was opinions in the Gemara that put wine between Kiddush and Havdalah. Right? Because the wine was more associated with Havdalah, or because you want to make the wine attached to both Kiddush and Havdalah. But here the Alter Rebbe says, if one puts Kiddush before wine, no good. One has to again make Kiddush. Why is that? Because because the person followed Shammai against Hillel. We haven't learned this yet. This is coming up. But the halacha is, there's a dispute. The Gemara makes a dispute between Shammai and Hillel as to what comes first, Kiddush or wine. This is not a question of Havdalah, this is a question of Kiddush.
Mm-hmm.
Does one make Kiddush first or wine first? And we're going to get into it. Big discussion there, but essentially it comes down to what causes what. Or sorry, what are the principles at play? The wine is more frequent and therefore should be first. That's Hillel's view, as we learned yesterday. But Shammai's view is that Kiddush is why you're drinking wine. Why are you drinking wine at all tonight? Because you have to make Kiddush. Okay, so Kiddush comes first because Kiddush is what brought the wine about. And there's other considerations as well, which we'll get to when we learn that section of the Gemara, which is really not going to be a subject of Pesach. It's going to be a subject of Kiddush in general, which we'll learn more in Reisha and Gimel when we get to that, chapter 273. When we finish the laws of Kiddush, right? We have to cover. We still have to get back to our Kiddush, covering the bread, making Kiddush in the middle of your meal. When we're done with that, we're going to learn that section. Now, the halacha is ordinarily, when there's a dispute and you follow one view and not the other view, okay, maybe you shouldn't have because we're supposed to follow the one view, but we can rely on the other view that's in the minority and not to invalidate what you did. But when it comes to a dispute between Hillel and Shammai, the Gemara is explicit that anyone who says that Shammai is halacha in the place of Hillel is invalid. Right? The Gemara has this famous story right at the beginning of Brachas, where Rabbi Tarfon, I think it was, who did Shema following Beis Shammai, and they told him that you were worthy of put yourself in danger because he was traveling, because you followed Shammai instead of Hillel, and by God's retribution, you were worthy of being put in danger. Right? The Gemara is very strict about this, and therefore said the Alter Rebbe, you can rely on all the other opinions on the order of your Kiddush and your Havdalah, but not when it comes to the question of which one's first, wine or Kiddush. That's because Kiddush before wine is Shammai, and there's this unique ruling that one may not follow Shammai, which means like this: the Alter Rebbe is not suggesting that you have to put wine first, but that wine has to be before Kiddush. So what if you did Havdalah? Let's say you did candle, Havdalah, wine, Kiddush, and then Shechianim. You have to repeat the ceremony? Answer no, because Kiddush came after wine. So long as your Kiddush follows wine and you're not violating the precept of following Hillel instead of Shammai, you can rely on all the views. Even if wine, this is not a question of wine being first. It's a question of wine being before Kiddush, that you don't follow Shammai. There's the point. That's what it would seem from the way the Alter Rebbe phrases this whole statement. Okay? Keep on going. Whenever you're making Havdalah along with your Kiddush, as you go from Shabbos into Yom Tov, one doesn't make a blessing on the besamim, on the spices. Mm-hmm. Yeah. The fee Shema Shema Baruch Hamalab Sam B'chol Motzei Shabbos is something that's going to be inferred from the Gemara that we didn't learn yet. It's so hard to know like which point in the Gemara to stop to go to Shulchan Aruch, but there. Okay. The fee Shema Baruch Hamalab Sam, but it doesn't matter. We'll come back to it. The fee Shema Shema Baruch Hamalab Sam B'chol Motzei Shabbos is that which we make the bracha over B'sam every Saturday night to be the Lahon Shiva Nefesh in order to revive the soul. Shidoyavis, which is like feeling grieved or stressed. Grieved is a translation to give here. The Yitzias HaNefesh HaShabbos, because of the extra soul that was there over Shabbos, thou lost. Because of the extra added soul that was taken from it. Over Yom Tov, ain't tzarich l'b'samim. But on Yom Tov, one doesn't have to have that revival. Shetana Yom Tov is the joy and the pleasure that one gets out of Yom Tov is itself enough to revive the soul. And therefore, no need for besamim. Even though going from Shabbos to Yom Tov is to downgrade in holiness, but nonetheless, Yom Tov is definitely more holy than besamim. So besamim can revive the soul on a regular Saturday night, even though it's an ordinary weekday. Certainly, the joy of Yom Tov can do that have that same effect, and therefore on Saturday night going into Yom Tov, no reason to have the besamim. Okay, now comes a section that really isn't in the Gemara at all, but nonetheless is a serious question that we have to address which is what happens if a person forgot to make Havdalah. He forgot it was Saturday night. He sits down to Seder and he's just following the order. He didn't realize that it's Saturday night and he had to do Havdalah. But now he's already deep into his Seder. What does he do now? He's in the middle of his Haggadah. He's in the middle of reading the Haggadah. What should he do? Take another cup and make Havdalah? Are you allowed to do that in the middle of your Seder, in the middle of your Haggadah? Take another cup and drink it? What bracha do you make? How do you make it? It's a question that the Gemara is not addressed directly, but it has to be addressed. So the commentaries post Gemara discusses that, and the Alter Rebbe collects those views and the discussion here in subsection 7.
I could see that being a common error.
It is a common error because
most people are not.
That's right. You're following the Seder. It's not. Yeah, exactly. It's one of the reasons why it's a nice thing to like. This little aphorism, Yak Nahaz, is an exciting feature. Like as a kid growing up, it was exciting. Like, oh, we're doing Yak Nahaz, and like it was like a fun thing. You knew what it was, right? So like the uniqueness of the feature, like almost prevents you from forgetting about it. So that's a good thing. All right. Okay, so let's stop over here. And God willing, wait, Monday is a legal holiday.
Yeah.
So on Sunday we will continue and learn this subsection where what's the halacha? Sorry, Monday, Tuesday. We will, God willing, look at this and discover what the halacha is. It's interesting. At which point do you remember and what do you do? We're gonna find some interesting, unique halachic. What's the word? Clever twists in how to deal with principles. Again, principles like you're not allowed to drink between cup 1 and 2. Right? That's principle A. Principle B is you have to make Havdalah. Principle C is all of that coming together. We're going to see. Okay. Good day and a good Meorei Shabbos.